So we left off with the idea that we're looking at this text of the Aruch HaShulchan, right, Rabbi Epstein, and he speaks about the taxes that are imposed in the community, and of those who are trying to stop it or to spoil it. And spoil it, I said, probably by turning to the government. So he said there are companions of Yerovam ben Nevat, who is a heretic, but also someone who split over tax issues and really created another government. He's a rebel. So just after he said that we cannot rebel against the emperor, he says if you join forces with the government against the community, you are a rebel. So he has this like two voices where he has to be very careful how to convey his message, enforcing the law in his community, but not projecting the message outwardly that he might not be supportive of the government. He says, "Ve'al tashgiach," don't pay attention or don't be worried. Im yesh gam mehalomdim shemachzikim hameharsim, demistama en b'hem yirat shamayim dok v'tishkach. What is he saying here? That some of halomdim, some of the scholars of Torah, mehazkim hameharsim, they support those who go against the community in terms of tax collection. And he says, don't be deterred by it, because those people certainly do not have reverence. Dok v'tishkach, and if you work hard enough, you'll find that it's true. So there's an accusation that those scholars who support the people who go against the community law are they are irreverent and they're maybe heretics. And if you work hard enough, you will find out. So, with all due respect that I have for Rabbi Epstein, that when you look at this situation, it's really hard to tell who's right and who's wrong. Right? I mean, first of all, it reveals in between the lines, we learn of the struggle that some communities had in Europe, but similar things happen all over the world, Middle East, in America today, where your community was split because they had this kind of an autonomous government over paying taxes, traditions, and all that. When you have this very difficult situation where if you are a whistleblower and if you come and say the system is corrupt, they tell you you have no reverence. You are not a scholar. So how do you know who's right and who's wrong? It's very difficult. So I'm just saying that this is a problem that could never really be fully solved. If you look, take an example from America. A couple of years ago, and I remember that because I used it in my speech on, I think maybe even the high holidays. I think that Time magazine chose as Person of the Year 3 whistleblowers. One, I think one was from Enron. One was with the CIA after 9/11. Forgot what the third person was. And they praised them as those courageous whistleblowers who were not afraid of the corporation or the establishment and came forth and spoke and all that. But then I went back and revisited their case a couple of years later to see what happened with them. They all lost their jobs. Nobody would hire them. And nobody cared. I mean, after they were named, People of the Year, very nice. Now, what does it do for them? So that is the scary thing when we talk about something like that. That you could read those words, and those are beautiful words, where you say you have to stand with the community. You have to make sure that everything is done right, and those who go against it are like Yerovam, they break the law. Yeah, we agree with that. But how do you know who is the corrupt person and who is the whistleblower? And how do you make sure that those people who really expose corruption or unethical business practices are not punished by the system? So that is really a question that I don't think it can never be answered. It's an ongoing process of checks and balances. Okay, then he speaks about what exactly, but I'm not going to go into that. What exactly is within the authority of the board of directors, sort of like of the community that was elected? What are they allowed to do? What are they not allowed to do? So they say it's only for the benefit for the city, tikkun mitikunei ha'ir, and אם יש מנהג בעיר שהיא בכל לטובי העיר לעשות כפי נראה ביניהם בכל דבר, but if the practice in the city was that they could do whatever they want, then they could do anything, and the people of the city cannot block them. So here, probably there will be a measure if the people of the city realize that the elected representatives are taking advantage of their power, that they will be able to dethrone them and maybe rewrite the code, because they are the ones who decided how it's going to work. And there is actually a case like that I didn't quote here, but it's much earlier. It is the Shuvah. It doesn't really have to do with monetary issues. It's about the authority of the rabbi. There's a teshuvah by Rabbi Yitzhak Bar Sheshat, who was a rabbi from Spain, who came with the first wave of exiles from Palma de Mallorca in the late 1300s. That was about 100 years before Girush Sfarad, before the main exile. And he settled down in Algeria. And the Rivash they called him for short the Rivash, Yitzhak Bar Sheshat. Very prolific author, very interesting teshuvot, response that he has. And the question that he was sent was the following, and I'll ask you, what would you do in such a case? Of the rabbi in those communities had the authority to excommunicate people. He had the authority to banish people from the community in a way that no one will talk to them, no one will do business with them, or they will not get an aliyah, they will have to sit outside the synagogue, etc. And that was the norm in all Jewish communities. And of course, it also not only was the norm, there was an added element of the superstitious fear of, now that I am put in herem and excommunication, I might suffer, my luck is going to deteriorate, etc. So now this rabbi, regarding whom the question was sent to the Rivash, used to excommunicate people frequently, but they said he actually used to pick a fight with them, and when the person attacked by the rabbi verbally would answer back, the rabbi would say that this is a rebellion and would excommunicate him. So the Rivash answered the question. I wonder, what would you say to this question? And you were right. This is really what happened when the rabbis only have this authority in order to benefit the people. It's not some kind of authority that is given to him as a God-given gift. Just because you're a scholar, you deserve a higher status than others. You get this status because you're a servant, you're a public servant. As long as you serve the public, it's done. But if the whole public realizes that you're not serving them, but rather you are abusing them, they have the right, and that's what he explained to them. He says, you could disregard him as a scholar, rabbi, judge, even though he still holds the position for whatever reason. His excommunication or statement have no value whatsoever. So it's a seminal discussion. If you remind me, I'll email you the source later. Okay, so we could move on to another topic, and that has to do with the question that I raised in the beginning of the course, which is, what if you know that your partner cheats you and hides money or business from you? Are you allowed to seize that money and reclaim your property? And what if you know that someone stole an object from your home and from your house, and now he has it in his property? Are you allowed to go there and take it from him? So let's see what Aruch HaShulchan says. It's Aruch Mishpat, Siman Dalet. He says this: אף על פי שיחיד פסול לדון, וכל שכן הבעל דין בעצמו, So he says, one person cannot be a judge. You need three people to serve as a court, right? Even more so, v'chol sheken, I don't have time to write on that one yet. V'chol sheken, haba'al din ba'atzmo. Even more so, if we talk about the plaintiff, the plaintiff cannot become a judge, right? He's biased in the most terrible way possible. So it says, even though one cannot be Dayan, and definitely not the Baal Din, it says, Mikol Makom, however, Yesh Tifamim Shadam Osed Din Le'atzmo. Sometimes you are allowed to take the law into your hands. Kegon, Shero'eh Hefetz Shelo Beyad Acher, Shegezalo O Genavo, או שרצונו עתה לגזול ממנו, או שאינו רוצה להשיב לו פקדונו והפיקדון בעין, או שרוצה לעשות לו איזה היזק בממונו, וכל שכן בגופו. So there's a lot of different categories, but they all boil down to things that could really happen in the neighborhood, and in the airport. A purse snatcher, right? Do you run after him? Do you club him on the head? Do you, shoot him? I don't know. Maybe in certain states, yes. Hopefully only with tranquilizer darts. But he says sometimes you would take the law into your hands. For example, if you see that your object was something that is your possession is in the hands of another person, and you know that he either robbed you in plain sight or stole it from you, or if you have a certain object and someone is trying to attack you and take it from you, or if you gave him a collateral and the collateral is there, he would not give it back to you, or if he's planning to cause you monetary damage or physical damage, do you have to wait to go to court? Should you let him do whatever he's planning to do and then go to court and sue him, or should you stand up and defend your property, and then if you need, you will defend your actions? So he says, "En tzarich lalech lebedin." You don't have to go to court. Ela shebe'atzmo yachol litpos miyado. You yourself can grab it, can take it from the other person. Vela mi ba'ya. It's obvious. Vela mi ba'ya means it is not necessary, meaning we don't even have to say. Vela mi ba'ya bedavar שיגיע לו הפסד אם ימתין עד שילך לבדין, not only with regarding a thing that if he would not go to bedin immediately he will lose. And what is that? כגון מטלטלין שהגזלן יצניען וכיוצא בזה. Meaning if it's not real estate, but rather a robber took from you something which is portable and he could take it and hide it away, you're allowed to chase him and take him, do whatever you need to reclaim your property. De'az mutar lo gam lehakoto. You're allowed even to beat or physically attack that person. Im efshar lo lehatzil b'inyan acher. So he says, if someone is trying to steal your property, and the only way you could save your property and reclaim it is by, or your object is by physically harming the other person, you're allowed to do that. So that's why I mentioned before the idea of the concept of the purse snatcher, because when we hear that, we automatically say, no, I'm not going to beat another person just because of monetary damage. But there are certain things that you might do it for. You might say, this is something that I'm going to go into a physical brawl in order to save my. So maybe to me, and I'm sure most of us, our ID and our credit cards are more important than maybe if I have a book on the table, someone comes and snatches and goes away. I go, okay, you know what? Enjoy. Anyway, it was a boring book. But this is, I think, something that happens today. Am I right? Is it still something that applies today? Would you say that there are certain things that we draw the line, like if I'm being mugged or attacked in the street, I could defend myself. If someone breaks into my house, am I allowed to attack that person?
Certain states have what they call stand your ground laws.
Yes.
Which means that if a person invades your personal space in a way that's violent,
you're allowed to shoot him.
Dangerous, you're allowed to pretty much do whatever you want. But they're so capricious, like they're not very well defined, and
right.
very hard to argue.
Right. So here's the question: can a person booby trap his house?
Yes.
You're allowed to do that.
You're allowed to do whatever you want. Now, if a person gets caught in the booby trap, they could theoretically sue you.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that they'll win it. There's no one definitive law about this kind of thing. It does vary from state to state, and then also it depends on who each person is, at least in this country.
Right. Yeah, it's a little scary. So it's interesting because when you look at biblical law, the Torah says that if someone breaks into your house at night, is a potential killer. He's going to an enlo damim. He has no. So it seems like it could be a good argument that, say, if anyone breaks into your house in a way that seems fine. What if someone broke into your house in broad daylight, and when everybody's away in school, he didn't think there's anyone at home? Do we still treat him the same way as someone who came to commit a violent crime?
Well, the biblical stature about it assumes that a person who'd break into somebody else's home is very, very desperate and will go through desperate means to accomplish his ends.
Right. But it says if it's at night.
Oh, I think it still holds true.
Yes. Right, no, so the Talmud says it's not about night or day, but it's about the circumstances, right?
So I'm not sure that holds true today.
Right.
Because it's also the idea that they're so desperate to steal that they're going to steal something everybody will recognize as yours. And that doesn't apply today either.
Right. Right. So there was an interesting case a couple of years ago, many years ago, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, where a certain student of chemistry in college or in high school, I don't remember exactly, was bullied in school, and someone always stole his lunch. So at a certain point, he got really sick and tired of it. So he poisoned the sandwich. You remember the story? You remember the case? And when yeah, right. So when the person ate the sandwich, of course, he had seizures. He was writhing on the floor, and then the bullied kid stepped forward and gave him the antidote, and he became the hero. He stood for himself, and he did that, and it became an interesting question. Like rabbis in Israel dealt with this question. They called it lehem mu'al. It's like, are you allowed to do that or not? And I argued back then that it's not. You're not allowed to do that. Now, actually, most rabbis agreed that you cannot do that. The one rabbi who said that you could do it was Rabbi Yitzhak Zilberstein, the head of the Bnei Brak rabbinical court, and he said this is just like someone breaking into your property. That, Rebecca said, set your ground. That's what he claimed, but I think there's a clear difference there.
Well, it would be if someone had sent you an email saying they were going to break into your house. Like, if you know that someone's going to break into your house and you said something that's going to cause them real harm, then it's entrapment.
Yeah, but right. So that's the difference is that you know that someone is going to break into your house. Someone is going to steal your sandwich. You're saying
this person did something that he knew would cause physical harm to another person.
Oh, you're talking about the one who put the poison, right? Right. So first of all, it's the person. There are two main differences between when someone breaks into your house. He knows that he is breaking the law in a way that if you confront him and shoot him, you will not be held accountable. So he's preparing himself for what could be a fatal confrontation. So he becomes a potential killer. The bully who stole the sandwich from that kid's lunchbox was not a potential killer. He was a really serious annoyance, but he didn't get into that category yet. But then there's another difference. Your house has defined boundaries, right? We know where your house is. I have no issue. I have no reason to be in someone else's house if I'm not invited. So, by trespassing that boundary, I'm already sort of stating that I'm not expecting to be protected. I'm by the state or by anyone. But when you take the sandwich and you put it in a bag and you carry it around, then you bring that danger into public property, and that is something that is dangerous. So, a case of in between would be that there was a case of a burglar whose signature move was to find the most expensive scotch in the house. He broke into and take a glass of scotch to drink from it. So the question was raised in a neighborhood that people knew was prone for that. Is someone allowed to poison the scotch in his bar? So that, I think, remained sort of hanging out there, because on one hand it's like booby trapping the house. On the other hand, this burglar proved maybe in his other action that is not a violent one, is not using deadly force or anything like that, and you are putting specifically something to kill him. So I don't know. I would have said that if the case would come to me, I would tell the guy, you know what, put something in, not poison in the scotch. Maybe put laxative or something like that, but not. But anyway, these are interesting questions that come on for us, in a regular basis. But here, the author of Aruch HaShulchan says be'atzmo yachol litpos miyado, right? So you're actually allowed to go into someone else's property and reclaim yours. So it could be that it's because, we could argue that it's because he lived in a still not under a just system of law, but even today there are still areas where people settle disputes in that manner, because they know that if they go to the government or if they go to court, it will take months or even years. So there's sort of like an unwritten agreement that you could reclaim your property. You're responsible for certain things. That is between even today in the West Coast, among ranchers and farmers, there is this concept that you take the law into your hands, because this is sort of like an autonomous, independent entity. It says now, even if the thing that was taken is not going to be, there's not going to be any monetary loss. Meaning if the stolen object, or it actually here cannot steal, but he's a squatter, right? And in that case, you're not allowed to be that person. So, since I said you cannot really steal real estate, well, you could squat. And this is a big problem. Depends on which state, which county. In LA, between Los Angeles and Beverly Hills, the laws of how you defend the tenants' rights are sharply divided. And what do you do when someone took over your property? Are you allowed to, at a certain point, lock that person? Let's say you have an empty apartment, and that person came into it and settled down in the apartment. Are you allowed at a certain point to go there, wait for that person to be out, take his stuff out, and put a lock on the door? Right? but then you might run into trouble. It would be Rebecca. Did you deal with a case like that?
Not personally, but one of my landlords did, and there's squatters' laws and things like that, and that's what he had to wait for. He had to wait for until the couple was completely out of the apartment, and then he was able to go and change the lock because they gave up their squatters' rights.
Oh, but so if they are both out of the place, there it's okay to do that.
I don't know. I mean, it's not okay for them to be squatting in there in the first place, but there are laws that protect squatters.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation. I think no, there's a difference between a squatter and a non-paying tenant. I think that probably in each contract there's certain provision for what how long could you go without paying before you're considered illegally living.
Yeah, in arrears.
Right. But I know from a friend who owned a property in LA and had squatters that he was in it's a tricky situation because the person, when he started the litigation and tried to get the person out, the person told him he's going to destroy his apartment, clog the system, put corrosive material on pipes, on the door handles. So it's really those things happen until today that people take stuff, either portable or real estate, and there's nothing you could do about it. And it's that's why you have.
I'm surprised though that should be considered an act of stealing in itself. Being a squatter.
Of course, the squatter is a thief. There's no question. Actually, the concept of squatter is already discussed in the Talmud, and it falls under the category called zen hene v'ze lo haser. Meaning, if I live on your property in a way that causes you no damage, there were those who argued that you're not to tell me to go away because it's midat sdom. It's being extremely stingy. Because as you have no damage, that you lose nothing from me being there. But it's not that simple to say that you have no damage, because something will always happen. So it's a very rare case where you really apply this concept of zen and and you allow the squatter to remain there. But if we come to business ethics from the point of view of halakha, obviously a squatter. If you have a squatter who's orthodox, then he's not orthodox. I mean, according to the definition of the halakha here, to take anything that belongs to you and to use the law that prevents you from taking it back from me would be a major transgression. To himself, he says that, like we explained, that if you know that a certain object is yours, you could take it. But you cannot take something for a debt. But you could take something as a collateral. So now he says that the Zohar says that you should not keep the collateral to yourself, and that's interesting. What? Maybe I'll ask you that. What do you find intriguing with this statement of the Zohar that one should not keep the collateral to himself, and the fact that Aruch HaShulchan quotes it?
Well, first of all, it's remarkable that the Aruch Shulchan is quoting Zohar for anything halachic.
Right. And then not just any halakha. Is
that kind of unprecedented?
Very rare. I mean, you would find that he will quote the Zohar about rituals, about prayers, about modesty, about sanctity, etc., but not about monetary laws. That keeping someone's collateral is a sort of a spiritual transgression, and that's really interesting to me. This is something that maybe needs more. More investigation. That's a good topic for a paper. The business ethics in mysticism. there is one other thing that I could think of that is mentioned in the Zohar, and actually became a big thing in the yeshivot today, that if you owe money, the Zohar or later Kabbalists say that if one person owes another person money, and the creditor and the debtor died before bringing this to justice, they will have to come back to be reincarnated in order to bring that thing to a settlement, to a closure. So I think that part of it is sort of a deterrent and a way to scare people, to say you don't want to get entangled in reincarnation, in mystical powers that are going to control you. You want to do the right thing. And if that is the case, then it fits a general trend of the Zohar, which was one of the main concerns of the Zohar was to reestablish certain practices that fell out of favor with the people in medieval times. For example, eating 3 meals on Shabbat, doing Ma'am Ahronim, washing your hands after the meal. So it's very probable that was a very common transgression at the time, that people would take collaterals and they would never give them back. It makes sense because this was part of the financial system of the time, where people were traveling from place to place. They needed to borrow money. They would give some of their objects in return for a cash loan, etc. And people maybe never gave them back the collateral, or they decided that they're going to take the laws into their hand and keep objects that belong to another person, and that's maybe the Zohar does that. So what is the implication of the concern of the Zohar? Ba'al nefesh yahush lazeh. If you're really a sensitive spiritual person, should be really concerned about what the Zohar says. V'lachen yelech techef lebedin v'yitba'inu ladin. You should not delay it, but after you took the collateral, you should go to bedin and sue that person. Ve'im lo yetzayed dina. And if he refuses to oblige by the verdict of the court, and why would he be obligated? Because, like we said, we are talking about a case where the person who was wronged has proof that this property is his. So then the bedin can give him an order to take this object, or for others to take it from him. So there is a concept called ikul, which is still the word used in Israel today for repossession. Sorry, that was not the sign that was supposed to go there. So ikul is repo. That's the way where the municipality or the government would come and take your possessions for either for a debt, for not paying rent, for not paying. In Israel, it used to be the TV tax. They could take your TV set. So we'll stop here, and next time after the Hagim, we'll talk about Siman Kavav, where he speaks about going to non-Jewish civil courts. But what we've seen so far is that after we saw the Maimonides talking about the laws of commerce, merchandise, measurements, weights, and the responsibility of Bedin for that, we went to Aruch HaShulchan to see how the structure of the community was built, how we talk about judges and what is their authority in Israel, outside Israel. Could they impose on the community or only on or even on individuals? What type of evidence they need? How far does their authority stretch, including physical punishment, monetary fines? We saw that he's trying to zigzag between a commitment to the emperor of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the commitment to the community, and eventually it gives us the flip side. It says on one end the court has the power to take care of serving justice, but if they cannot do that, you're allowed to do it yourself, as long as you know that you could prove your arguments. So I think that with that, we'll sum up what we did today, and we'll reconvene after the holidays, B'ezrat Hashem. If we connect it back to the case of, like you said, the body shop, where one partner was stealing money or hiding jobs from the other, and the rabbi said that you could take jobs on the side until you make up for the lost amount, and then you split. The rabbi didn't tell him, okay, go to the garage, go to your body shop, and take some spare parts and sell them and keep the money, because that would be taking objects from another person, repossessing, and you cannot do. But what he said was, when there was a certain agreement, there's a contract that ties you and forces you to disclose jobs or commissions that come to you to your partner. Now, if you choose not to do that, you're not stealing money from the other. You're preventing money from coming into his possession, which is still a problem, but would not fall under the same exact category of keeping a collateral to yourself, but rather more you're severing the ties, the potential ties between the client and your partner. So to each case on, but it's important to know that the rabbi said at that time, of a specific debt that happened, and once you reclaim it, you have to break your partnership, because you cannot continue with a partnership that is based on deception and disrespect.